Hi friends, thank you for joining me today. Welcome to today's episode. Today's episode we're talking about boundaries, and I'm going to discuss the importance of boundaries. Why are they important to set? What are boundaries? How do you navigate setting boundaries? And essentially I'm going to share with you a really powerful technique called the traffic light system. The traffic light system is a system I've been using recently, and it's really helped me actually just gain a clear understanding of what boundaries are, how to set them, and why they're important. Now, I think one of the issues when it comes to setting boundaries is it can be hard to gain a discernment over when it's someone else or when it's you. And I think that's the first step which makes boundary setting difficult, because we need some level of emotional intelligence to be able to decide is there an aspect of truth that I am not speaking for myself? And how is that being violated? How am I not fully communicating my truth? And because I'm not fully communicating my truth, because of that misunderstanding, is that truth getting violated? Versus maybe I'm misinterpreting a situation, and because of that misinterpret, I'm actually falling into some level of victim mentality and blaming it on the other person. And I could be setting boundaries that don't necessarily need to be there. So that's the issue when it comes to setting boundaries, is how do I know it's me versus them? And that's why I think it's quite a tricky beast. And I think depending on your personality type, and if you're quite a sensitive or empathetic person, you generally fall into the first category, where you generally just assume everything's all you, and it's something that you're doing and you're in the wrong, and you're constantly in this flux and flow, and you're not protecting your truth, you're not protecting your kingdom within. And for that very reason, essentially you're open to being attacked, you're open for your truth to be violated, and it can be very subconscious, and it can take a bit of work and a bit of emotional intelligence and contemplation within yourself to realize that that dynamic might be happening. Of course, generally highly sensitive people are more aware of what boundaries are, because they're the ones that need to set them. Generally, boundaries should be quite a natural part of our existence, but for a lot of people, I find they're not. And of course, a lot of people that do walk a spiritual path find setting boundaries really tricky. And one of the reasons why is when we're walking a spiritual life, one of the things that we want to grow in is love and acceptance. We want to be able to grow, and we want to be able to hold space to the entirety of reality, of course. And we can make a misunderstanding with that idea where we want to just hold space to everything without actually protecting the individual humanness that we have, that exists within our experience. And we have to honor that we do have a self. In one context, we do have an ego, and it's vulnerable. If we don't protect our humanness, it can be abused. It can open ourselves up to being abused. People can take advantage of us, and we could fall into situations that are dangerous for us. So boundaries are really, really important. And as you just grow through life, you start to understand yourself better. So the problem, obviously, when it comes to setting boundaries, or another issue, is boundaries are deeply personal. So no one can tell you what is the right or wrong boundary but yourself. So boundaries are essentially mechanisms to be put in place to protect your truth. That's all they are. And the ability to set strong boundaries is your ability to communicate your needs. And understanding your needs is one of the first aspects. Of course, it can be really tricky, but a good level of self-awareness helps you be able to understand what your needs are. And your needs are going to differ from one person to the next. Some people might need more reassurance. Some people might need more validation. Some people might not need any validation at all. Some people might not like it. Some people need praise. Whatever these needs might be. Also, some people might not appreciate being made fun of, whereas other people might appreciate being made fun of. So I actually really like being made fun of, and for that very reason, sometimes I make fun of other people, forgetting that actually they might not like that. And of course, if I overdo it, then they will come along and set boundaries, which I appreciate. So what I found really useful for myself is I've created a system, and I've called it the traffic light system. It's kind of simple. It's using obviously the universal symbols of traffic lights to be able to break down and contextualize where an individual or a group of people fit within your truth, within your kingdom. And if they're in the green light, it means they can enter into your kingdom. If they're in the amber light, it means they have to stand from afar. They're in the queue. And if they're in the red zone, then it means that they can't enter your kingdom. Maybe they've violated the rules and you can no longer, through protection of your own, enter into your space. So your kingdom is your well-being, essentially, your peace within. And if people are violating that, then you have to gain an understanding as to why they're doing that. And then you have to gain an understanding of how can I then tell this person in a non-violent way that that's what they're doing, to then allow the relationship to evolve or dissolve. So it's either going to go one of those two ways. And it can be a powerful process in letting go. So recently I went on a walk and I did a powerful contemplation to myself, and I said, what if I was to let go of everyone in my life, just hold space that if I had to, I could let them go. And it was a really, really powerful thought. I'm not saying you should fully do that, but it was just an experiment. And then it allowed me to view each connection that I had in my life in a more equanimous, peaceful, non-judgmental way, and analyze where they fit in the traffic light system. Were they amber? Were they green? Were they red? And I feel that this is what the system's all about. It's for you to go away. I've actually downloaded, I've linked a PDF at the bottom for you to download so you can cross-reference the PDF, which goes into great detail about how to actually use the traffic light system and do a self-audit on the connections that you have in your life. Anyway, so it allowed me to fully understand and gain a contextual understanding as to, okay, where does this person fit in this system? And do I need to have space from this person? Do I need to cut this person out and hold them over there? Or can I let this person into my kingdom? And what was really interesting, I found it just as powerful to analyze the people that I'm close with versus analyzing the people that I'm clearly have put at a distance. And the reason being is if you're not doing this, sometimes toxicity or unconscious parts of relationships and connections can form. And the reason why using the traffic light system is really helpful is it's almost doing a toxicity sieve. It's almost doing a toxicity scan, a toxicity audit. So you're just checking, the connection and just making sure everything's there, everything is brought into light. And I found it really useful. I was like, wow, this is really powerful. There's two aspects to the system that I think is really powerful that you have to take into account when setting boundaries. And the first one is the concept of non-violent communication. So this is a theory that's been written about in great detail, and there's even a book, which I'll put a link to below, that you can go away and read, and it's called Non-Violent Communication. And it just talks about how do you communicate your needs, wants, and desires in a way that isn't, or if it is going to cause conflict in the least possible way it can, because it's hard. A lot of the time when we try and voice our needs, we can end up in conflict, whether it's physical, verbal, and it traumatizes us and we think, why would we want to do that again? But actually, we sometimes forget that communication is an art. So the true core of communicating your needs and wants in a non-violent way is to be able to clearly start with what it is that you're feeling in a non-judgmental way. So if someone might be making fun of you constantly and you feel as though that they are violating you, but you haven't told them yet, the fact that you haven't told them might generate some anger in you. And then you go ahead and tell them, but if you project the anger onto them, then they're going to feel that anger and they're not going to realize. They're going to be like, why is he getting angry at me? I don't know what I'm doing. So you have to gain an understanding of that and other humans and how they behave. So for that very reason, you could mold your communication towards that person. You could go up to them and say, hey, you probably are not aware of this, so I thought it'd be important to tell you. And I just wanted to also acknowledge that this isn't an attack on you. But when you make fun of me in the situations of X, Y, and Z, it made me feel like this. I know that you're not aware that that's happening, but I just wanted to make you aware that that's how I feel. And for that very reason, I value you as a person. I want to get around this. How can we best resolve this problem? That's setting a good, clear boundary. It's being very clear in your communication, and it's not very triggering for the other person, and it's very fair and it's open. And if they are unable to accept that, or they don't like the way you've communicated that, then it shows you that that person isn't probably someone worth being in your kingdom, as it were. So it might be worth putting them in the red zone or in the amber zone. So for that, yeah. But most people would probably be able to accept that and appreciate the way you've communicated the information from that. And they'll be like, oh, thank you. I didn't realize. I'm really sorry I was doing that. I didn't realize it made you feel like that. Okay, I'll try and change my behavior. So sometimes as well, especially as men, we can sometimes feel it's weak to share how we're really feeling, or it's weak to express your emotions, or I'm sad today, or the way you did that made me feel weak, or I felt abused, or whatever words you want to use. It can be difficult and it can be a hard practice. It's uncomfortable to express your emotions. It's difficult, and I do definitely empathize. So it's definitely something that you need to consciously practice. It is like a practice, and you've got to constantly refine how you are communicating your boundaries, because a lot of the time we can end up destroying relationships through miscommunication, and they didn't need to be destroyed. And I've definitely done this through miscommunication. I've 100% fallen into that trap. I have been too empathetic sometimes, and also I sometimes have held fear around expressing my needs, because I've like, oh, if I say this, then maybe that person won't accept me, or I don't want to hurt how they feel. And sometimes you just have to get over that, because if you don't, then you're going to possibly lose really powerful, strong bonds with people that you're close with, and you didn't need to do that. So that's super important. The second element that I want to add as well to the traffic light system is the concept of loving people from afar. So it's adding in that spiritual element, and it's actually trying to grow ourselves in love while at the same time holding strong boundaries. And I think it's key. Two can't coexist. So they don't have to be antithetical in a sense, where if you are fully loving, you shouldn't hold boundaries. No, they're synergized. You hold strong boundaries to be able to love. You recognize the humanness in you, you recognize your limits, and you recognize where essentially your kingdom ends and where people need to respect, and then you just learn how to communicate them. And then it allows you to love deeper, and it gives you more energy and space to be able to love deeper. But it is a practice, and it does take time, because it's challenging, it's difficult, and it's uncomfortable, of course. So the idea of loving people from afar is, you imagine that you're not going to judge people for what they do, because one of the great insights we can have on the spiritual path, and Jesus nailed this quote, is forgive them, Father, for they don't know what they do. 95% of the time, people commit wrongdoing through unconsciousness. They're just not aware of what they're doing. And it's our ability to have to bring that unconsciousness to light through, again, non-violent communication. And sometimes people are going to cross the line. And it's generally not because they're good or bad. If you just remove that, what is good and bad? It's just concepts in the mind, right? We can fall into like this trap of being super judgmental. So we want to be really careful of that. But we want to acknowledge that we need protecting. So if people are dangerous, or they just fall right into the red zone, then you can still practice loving them from afar. You can still practice a really powerful technique called Metta meditation. And Metta meditation is essentially where you sit down, you focus on kind thoughts for yourself, you focus on kind thoughts for the people that are close to you. A bit like in the traffic light system, you can go from green to amber to red. You focus kind thoughts on people in the green category, you focus kind thoughts on people in the amber category, then you focus kind thoughts onto people in the red category. You can use mantras like, may they feel peace, be loved, and heal, right? And you can just send that mantra out to everyone in the different categories, and you work your way up, and you're practicing not holding judgment, holding a space for forgiveness, because we don't want to feel trapped by victimhood. If someone has done something bad to us, we definitely want to work on healing that as well at the same time, because one trap you can fall into when you start making boundaries is you can become a prison, and it's subconscious. You can use your compulsion and your insecurities as an excuse to set strong boundaries when they don't need to be set, and that's one of the tricky aspects. And that's why I was saying I want to honor the complexities of setting boundaries, because we're talking about dealing with other human beings, and that's why it's so tricky. We also want to add an insight that human beings generally fluctuate all the time. How we behave is on a moment-to-moment basis, generally. It's hard to accept that that's the case. So for that very reason, people are generally going to fluctuate a little bit on the system. And of course, we have our habit patterns. So generally we fluctuate, but not too much. People aren't, very loving to being very aggressive. It's normally like people are one or the other, right? But you have to acknowledge that people can change at any moment. So for that reason, you want to understand if someone is in green, they can still come out of that. They can still leave your kingdom. And there's nothing wrong with that. So, but we have to hold space with that and understand, humans are multi-dynamic. They can change at any moment. And it's just a fact of life. And the more you can accept that unknowing, ever-changing aspect to a human, then it just allows you to just deal with them in a bit more of an efficient way and a bit more in a way that's actually embodied in truth rather than fantasy, because that can be really tricky. So practice loving from afar, practice healing, and hold these complex insights as well, or at least just take note of them when you are setting boundaries, of course. So another aspect that we also need to talk about when it comes to boundaries is sometimes we might not be in a space to be able to physically remove ourselves from someone. So we might have to, or we might be forced into dealing with someone, maybe at work, or maybe you're living with someone and you've both decided to move forward with your life and separate, but you just can't because, for whatever reason, you're having to live together. You have to acknowledge that, and you have to look that actually setting boundaries is something that you do with someone else, and how you do that is how you protect your energy and how much energy you give someone else. So what you'll notice is setting boundaries from the fundamental level, the unspoken boundary, is understanding how your body operates around someone else and how much are you going into thought. So a lot of the time, if we can practice what's called somatic body work, is essentially all that means is practicing being grounded in our body when we are dealing with other human beings. Because when we're more grounded in our body, we're able to make better discernments, because our body generally has a lot of intelligence of its own, and it's picking out pieces of information when it's around people. So sometimes it can pick up information that we might not be aware of if we're really stuck in our head. But if we're stuck in our body, if we're aware of our body rather, we're grounded in our body. And how we do that is spending time doing exercises where we put consciousness into the body, and we become aware of how are the sensations in our body reacting to our mind. What's our mind thinking and what's our body saying, and is there a synergy between the two, or is there a disconnection between the two? And if so, coming back into the body will allow you to quieten the mind and make better decisions, and it allows you to channel your energy better when dealing with people. It allows you to go, oh, this doesn't feel right, this situation, so I'm not going to throw myself into it, or I'm now going to take a step back, I'm going to become present, and then I'm going to clearly communicate whatever it is that I need to communicate. So presence and somatic grounding, being in our bodies, is so important when it comes to understanding how to set boundaries, because it sets the boundary on an energetic level before words are even spoke of. And I think we can all notice when we've done this versus when we haven't. When someone comes into our life or comes into our space and we just feel like we've been taken away, and we don't know how we ended up there, but it just feels like it's happened. But if we can get into our bodies, we're more likely to get into the truth of what's actually happening in our experience when around someone. So becoming embodied is really, really important when it comes to setting boundaries, because it's setting unspoke of energetic boundaries that are more nuanced and difficult to describe. So I also want to quickly talk about a aspect to setting boundaries that have really helped me, or just the practice, and it's martial arts. So I recently got into mixed martial arts, practicing wrestling, jiu-jitsu, striking, any combat sport where you have to physically confront physical confrontation is really, really helpful, because when you practice physical confrontation and physical combat, it is almost like a mini metaphor for setting boundaries and energy exchanges, because you learn about how to protect yourself, you learn about distance management, you learn about how to move your body in certain ways to give yourself the most strength, to how to hold the correct posture. And essentially you're showing yourself, you're proving to yourself that the worst possible situation with someone, which is violent confrontation, isn't really that bad. Like, you're putting yourself into that environment and you're realizing through obviously mutual agreement that you're not going to really hurt each other, you're sparring, you're practicing techniques, but you realize you're like, oh, this isn't that bad, I don't need to worry so much, and it calms your nervous system down. So if you look at any well-practiced martial artists, they're very calm around other people and they're very chilled and they're able to just express their needs. Probably that little bit better because they're not scared of conflict. So I would recommend mixed martial arts, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, boxing, Thai boxing, or just regular boxing, or even judo is a really good place to start as well. So if you haven't tried martial arts, 100% give it a go. It will just increase your confidence, it will increase your ability to be around people, and it just chills out your nervous system. So martial arts, I give a 10 out of 10 in helping you set your boundaries. So one also point I want to note is that you can use the system, you can use the traffic light system every day if you want to, because like I said, people are always changing and people are always going to be coming from red to green to light, from red to amber to green, or green to amber to red. So for that very reason, you have to take that into account, and you can use the system as much or as little as you want. You have to kind of find that sweet spot. So I found for myself, maybe doing kind of a self boundary audit once a month, once every 3 weeks, just really helpful. It just gives me a clear picture of where people kind of stand. And also it's good to acknowledge that it's just a system. That's it. It's just a system to help you navigate. Don't get too fixated on it. If you get too fixated on it, you can be constantly analyzing people and stuck in your head. And again, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to come out of our heads, we're trying to get into our bodies, and we're trying to make a safer space for healthy, loving connections to kind of foster and grow in our lives. And pick out any potential toxicity before it forms. So we're like, actually that's getting a bit toxic, so I'm going to remove myself from the situation. So yeah, I hope this helps. I hope we've covered the more nuanced aspects to setting boundaries and why they're important, and I hope the system helps you. Of course, setting boundaries in and of itself, the traffic light system, it's not actually the boundary setting in and of itself, because that's something you have to do in person. And you have to kind of figure out how to do that by practicing non-violent communication. What the traffic light system does is allows you to gain a context as to where people kind of stand in your life, and then it allows you to then move forward with that knowledge. So it is going to be a practice. So setting boundaries is a practice. You have to become conscious of it. You have to practice non-violent communication, practice your communication skills, and by doing this, you will develop healthier, better connections in your life. And also it allows you to introspect, because one other aspect that I should probably also note is if we're not introspecting, then sometimes we're not able to see when we screw up, because a lot of the time we're going to get this wrong. We're going to set boundaries that shouldn't have been set, because maybe we took things to heart and we misinterpreted a situation. So for that very reason, you have to give space for that. So it is a constant outer and inner kind of work that we're doing on ourselves. So yeah, just make sure you have that as well whilst practicing this work. And I hope this helps. Like I say, the traffic light system is linked below in a PDF. Let me know how you get on. I hope it helps, because it's definitely helped me. And go ahead, develop some beautiful connections. That's it for me. I'll see you guys in the next video. If you did find the information useful, you can like and subscribe if you desire. You don't have to. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Cheers.